Hey everybody, welcome to the Casual Obsession Horror Podcast. We are a group of friends that just decided to start a horror podcast where we talk about various horror-related media, mostly movies, I think, but who knows, maybe one day we'll delve into into other things. Starting off, this is going to be our episode 0, where we just talk about ourselves, our experience with the horror genre, and why we decided to start doing this. So, on that note, Noah, tell us the origin story of this podcast.
Hey, what's up? I'm Noah, and I'm the one that whined on Twitter about how I wanted a horror podcast, and all my friends came out and they're like, "Bitch, I watch horror movies." So we're doing a horror podcast.
He's like, boo-hoo, no one ever wants to talk about horror movies with me. If only I knew people who watched horror movies. And immediately he had 3 people who were like, dude, what the hell? And those are the 3 other hosts.
Well, to be fair, my response was very different in that I said, I do not watch horror movies, but I'll be like the weird one of like the newbie to the genre that just says dumb shit. So that's me.
Everyone needs that.
I actually think is going to be a pretty interesting addition to the overall flow of the podcast.
I hope so. But at some point it's going to like wear off where like after 20 episodes I'll no longer be the fresh-faced newbie. I will be a deeply scarred human.
Then we'll kick into some hardcore stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when I'll make everyone watch Hellraiser.
I was gonna Hellraiser. I was gonna say like
Hellraiser's the
scariest
movie I've ever seen.
Truly.
Roast him.
I'm looking forward to
him.
it. So to start off, we'll go around and just talk about ourselves a bit, say who we are. Noah, since you already talked a little, why don't we start with you?
Well, hello, I'm Noah. You can find me as Bubba the Bad, Bubbadad. I don't know. I like horror movies a lot. I don't know what exactly it is that made me become a big horror fan, but I remember like the early inclinations of it where I used to watch a bunch of like Morgan Freeman detective movies, and I don't know, they have a lot of like dark themes in them, and I'm like, ooh, this is kind of cool. And then I don't know why I watched The Shining, but by golly, I've just jumped right into it with The Shining and Nightmare on Elm Street. So here we are today. Let's see.
That's really the most unceremonious trial period there is, right? Just getting thrown headfirst into The Shining.
Honestly.
Because, like, I know, because I've seen movies scarier than The Shining since then. You know, like, that's...
Well, sure.
The standard has been passed for me, like, tenfold after having seen that. But, like, kicking it off with just such an unsettling movie.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen lots of movies that are scarier than The Shining, but I haven't seen a lot of movies that scared me as much as The Shining did the first time that I watched it.
Mm-hmm. It was a very uncomfortable experience that first time, and I liked it a lot. And then Nightmare on Elm Street was just scary because I watched it in the house that my friend was like, "Yeah, man, my house is haunted." And
in the basement that he said was extra haunted, actually.
Yeah, in the extra haunted basement where he said he saw people walking around just out of sight sometimes in a, mind you, brand new suburb house. But
the suburb was so fresh they didn't even have grass everywhere yet.
Yeah, they didn't have grass everywhere. The road wasn't even named properly yet. You could not get there on Google Maps. But here I am. I gotta say, Firstly, I don't believe in ghosts.
Important clarifier.
However, that house was almost enough to make me believe in ghosts. It was a very uncomfortable house.
Brand new suburb house.
And realistically, a great spot to watch that movie in.
It would have been a better place to watch Poltergeist.
Yes. No, that's about it, though. I don't know. I'm trying to pick, like, out of the movies I've watched, like, what a favorite movie would be. And I really don't want to be like that guy that's like, oh, Friday the 13th, because that's like a series. I love the series as a whole, individual movie-wise. I don't think any of the movies stand up to the concept of the series at large, you know?
Do you want to do a
With
top
the-
3?
Yeah, 3, 5, and 6.
Okay.
That's good choices.
I like 3.
Yeah.
3, 5, and 6, in my opinion, are your quintessential Friday movies. But also, I don't know. The
Also
Devil's Candy
Hellraiser?
was one of my... Well, Hellraiser is, I think, will always be, like, my favorite, but I don't like trotting it out as my favorite. I don't know why,
It makes
but
it
there's
sound
part
like
of me
you
that's
like
just like...
bad movies. That's why.
No, it's not a bad movie. But it does make me seem... See, when you tell someone, oh my gosh, Hellraiser is my favorite movie, they're like, oh, so you like really kinky sex. And you're like a pervert. And I'm like, no, I just like the man with the needles in his head.
Of course
Noah,
not.
Good church boy.
But yeah, you know, the Friday franchise, Devil's Candy, Hellraiser, those are probably, if I'm going to only pick a couple movies that I'm going to end up being stuck with, that would be them.
Nice.
I don't know.
All right.
That's good stuff.
Neato. Who's next?
Jeff, you've been
Yeah,
talking
Jeff.
a lot during
I've been
Noah's
talking
session. Why
Yeah,
don't you
Jeff,
talk?
would shut up.
King Joffrey.
I am Jeff. I am Noah's younger brother. You can find me on Twitter at Bubba Wubbadab, spelled like it sounds. Why am I into horror movies? I think it all goes back to my childhood. When I was a kid, I was scared of like everything. Like legitimately, it's not just a joke. I do actually think it goes back to childhood. I was a very scared kid. Everything scared me, and I think at some point in like my early teens, I started listening to like heavy metal, and some part of me was like, I need to start being into all the scary stuff so I can undo everything that I've done so far.
Mm-hmm.
Or like to compensate somehow or something, you know? And
Yeah.
I don't mean to downplay how much I actually do enjoy horror movies and heavy metal, but I think that's kind of the root of why I wound up getting into it.
That makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah, much like Noah, of course, the first time that he watched The Shining, that was when I watched it as well, and I'm 2 years younger than him, so I was perhaps a little bit young for that one at the time. It scared the pants right off of me.
Valid.
It wasn't.
When did we
Two-
watch Alien? We watched that around that time,
It was
didn't
around
we?
the same time that we watched Alien, and also Silence of the Lambs was pretty close to then as well, which is all just like, that's a massive 3-hit combo.
Yeah, that's a
At
lot.
least Silence makes sense from like, oh, Morgan Freeman dark detective movies. Silence of the Lambs. Those at least line
You
up,
can kind of
right?
track that, yeah. But on the other hand, Silence of the Lambs is of, I'd say, it's debatably a more viscerally disturbing movie out of the three.
Oh, without a doubt.
Like
Morgan
that's when
Freeman didn't have
you watch
Hannibal the
Alien, you
Cannibal.
don't feel like you need to take a shower afterward. You watch Silence of the Lambs the first time, you kind of feel like you need to do something to cleanse yourself, you know?
Oh,
I
yeah.
have never had that experience with Silence of the Lambs.
Really?
But
Okay.
Must be nice.
So we all know who's the real hardcore here.
Yeah.
If I were to pick
I
a
just
favorite
really-
horror movie, I think I might actually say something goofy like Evil Dead 2, because I have a good time when I watch it.
Yeah.
that's important. That's important.
Yeah, that's
in
that's
any
why
experience.
I like Friday the 13th movies as well. But of course Noah already took that, so I can't say it.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
a strict no copying rule for our podcast.
Yeah.
Especially amongst the brothers, no copying.
Obviously, I have to have opposite opinions to Noah on everything. That's why I hate Hellraiser.
Boo again.
It's not a good movie. We'll talk about that when we cover it.
True. True.
I can't wait.
Nina, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Alrighty. My name is Nina. I don't want to have everyone state how they're related to Noah, but I have to because I'm his fiance.
Legal obligation.
But I'm also an artist. All my social media is Nina Wolverina, spelled Nina and then Wolverina,
Thanks for breaking that down for us.
Yeah, you're welcome. But
See, I feel like I've started the worst trend in having to spell my username because everyone has to do
Now we're
it
just
now
memeing
just to
on
make
ya.
fun of me.
Yep. But yeah, I do a lot of art. It's not a lot of it is horror related. I actually do have a horror specific side Twitter called House Usher Rises, which is a reference to Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of House Usher. Which leads me to precisely how I got into horror, which is not film was the last like horror media that I latched onto. I started with written media, specifically old horror like Frankenstein and Sweeney Todd, and then I got into stuff that was like visually, like Junji Ito's like comics and stuff like that. And then finally I started watching movies, and I'm still fairly new to that. Like, I have been desensitized to horror because I got really into like the written media, but I haven't seen a whole lot of movies. So, yeah, my favorite ones though, so far, I really like Devil's Candy because I really related to the protagonist of that one, who is this meth head looking artist guy who spends the whole movie zoning out painting, so I feel it. I love him. There's one scene where he's like painting and then it cuts to like supposedly a couple hours later and it's like dark out and he forgot to pick his daughter up from school and he probably hasn't eaten all day, and I'm like, that's what the kids call a mood. But I really liked that one. But Silence of the Lambs is my all-time absolute favorite horror movie, even though some people would say it's just a thriller with some horrific imagery. So yeah, that's all from me, I think.
Yeah. And that's a good movie and one that I've actually seen. So
Wow.
far, of all the movies we've talked about and mentioned, that's the one I know. And
I thought
lastly,
you said you
but
were a
not
noob.
leastly, it's me, Emma. You can find me on Twitter at mjade2017. That's EMJADE2017. And I'm the newbie. I really have avoided horror movies my entire life and a lot of horror media because I think going to the movie theaters when I was really young and there would be like horror trailers before whatever movie we would watch, it really freaked me out. And
No, I feel that.
a lot of my young childhood was spent overseas, and so they didn't really kind of censor what trailers would be shown in front of like a kid's movie or like Star Wars or something before the movie played. And so there was just a lot of like really graphic images that hit me, and I think it really freaked me out. So
Oh, so you were like out watching Cars and you got trailers for Freddy vs. Jason or something?
something like that. Yeah. But yeah, so that always really freaked me out, and I avoided the horror genre. And in more recent years, I've been playing with more like very dark thrillers, which I'll probably list as my movie that got me into the genre is one of those. But still, like, this first week was, I would say, my first like delve into actual kind of horror movie. The movie that got me into kind of being more into like darker, more serious and kind of freaky themes was a movie called Prisoners with Jake Gyllenhaal and
Oh,
Hugh
yeah.
Jackman. Really great, very unnerving movie about some kids being kidnapped and the parents and the police trying to find who's responsible. I don't think it's classified as horror anywhere, but it's just very, very intense. And ever since then, I really was a lot more interested in kind of like darker stories and just hearing about them. Even though I wouldn't like go out and watch movies about them, I still would. I thought it was fascinating to like think of creepy stories or like read some creepypastas or whatever.
Yeah,
or like
yeah.
go to our no sleep, because I just thought it was very imaginative and interesting. My favorite movie in the horror genre, this is a total cop out, but on Google it's listed as a horror movie, so I'm counting it. It's Coraline.
Oh, valid.
what? That's
Super
fair.
valid.
Yeah. Such a good movie, very creepy, technically a kid's movie, but I'm sure it's scarred a lot of people.
It scarred my little sister. My mom got mad at me for showing it to her.
Yeah,
See,
it came out when I was in
watched-
high school, and my brother texted me because he's huge into animation, and he was like, hey, this movie's incredible, and also it's really creepy. Like, a bunch of parents had to take out like their crying kids during the movie because they were so
I
scared.
believe it.
Oh, jeez.
And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go watch that.
See, I remember hearing about it when it came out, but also being just like, oh, that must be very, very scary then. I shan't watch it.
Yeah.
Because it was around the time when I had seen Nightmare on Elm Street. And fast forward to like, I think only 3 years ago, I finally watched it, and I remember thinking, that's not that scary. But like, that was also a solid year or two into me being like a horror fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, we talked about this earlier, Noah and I, because Coraline was actually going to be part of my, like, introduction to horror thing, because I'm also very into animation. That's something that Emma's brother and I actually bonded over when we met. But Coraline, I didn't really watch it as a kid, but watching it with a kid next to me started like making me recontextualize all the scenes and realize how creepy they would be if I were her age.
Yeah.
Specifically, like the scene with like they're at the old lady's house and they like taxidermy their dogs whenever their dogs die, and I was like, that is disgusting.
Yeah.
If I were a kid, that would freak me out.
I mean, even as an adult, that's pretty dark.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of like dark elements in that movie, and it's really, really fascinating, and I love it a lot. Who knows? Maybe we'll talk about it some episode. In
I
the
would like
future.
that.
Yeah, why not? I can't believe we didn't do our first episode on something tamer than what we ended up picking in hindsight.
Well,
There
Yeah,
was-
because we
there's a
decided to start
world-
with the scariest movie that I have ever seen.
10 out of 10.
10 out of
Spoiler
10.
alert,
I
it's 10 out of
definitely
10
didn't
scary.
laugh out loud at any point during the movie or anything like that.
Yeah, we'll talk
We'll
about
talk
that.
about it.
I'm
We'll
I
excited.
laughed
too.
a couple of times.
So as a breakdown, the four of us know each other. We're friends, but Jeff and Noah are brothers. Nina is engaged to Noah currently, and I'm the odd one out in that I'm just a friend to people. So,
I mean, I like having you as a friend, so I don't think you're that much of an odd one out.
thanks. But yeah, so that's our setup. That's it for this first session 0. Thanks for sticking around and getting to know us a bit. We hope you enjoy our first episode about Poltergeist, which is coming up next.
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Nope. Nope.
Nope.
Nope.
No,
Nope,
we're
not Poltergeist.
Nobody watched Poltergeist.
No,
Brief moment of panic.
that's next week. What was this one?
Insidious.
Insidious. First episode about Insidious. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.